There's a moment in life when you're left standing alone, looking back at the wreckage someone else caused, and for the first time you don't cry, you don't beg them to come back, you don't overthink what you could have done differently. You don't even feel broken anymore, because something deeper than pain rises inside you. It's power, quiet, calm, unshakable power, but you didn't always feel that way. There was a time when the pain was unbearable. When every morning felt like waking up with a weight on your chest, when you'd fake a smile and say, "I'm fine," while holding back tears behind your phone screen, when you couldn't understand how someone you gave so much to could leave you so empty, you tried to make sense of it, tried to fix what was never yours to fix. You took the blame, you questioned your worth, you replayed conversations, you clung to memories, and every part of you wanted closure from the person who broke you. But then came the shift. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. It was slow, messy. Some days you felt empowered, others you fell back into the storm, but that pain, it did something important. It woke you up. Pain became your teacher. It stopped you from romanticizing red flags. It forced you to build boundaries. It taught you the difference between love and attachment. And in the middle of the chaos, you started rebuilding. Stronger, wiser, more grounded. Now you look back, and you don't want revenge. You don't want to go back. You don't even want to prove anything to them. You just want to say one thing: thank you. Thank you for the pain, because it made me stronger. And here's how: there are moments in life that you don't see coming. Moments that knock the breath out of your lungs. Moments that strip everything familiar from your world and leave you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering how you got here. You didn't plan for the betrayal. You didn't sign up for the heartbreak. You didn't expect the silence from the people you showed up for when they needed you. And yet, there you were, holding the pieces of your own heart in a world that kept moving like nothing happened. In those moments, the only thing louder than the chaos outside is the voice in your head asking, why me? Why did they walk away? Why didn't they stay? Why did the person you trusted the most become the one who hurt you the deepest? You didn't feel strong in those moments. You felt broken, fragile, like every breath was work. Like getting through a single day took the strength of 1,000 battles. You felt like you were drowning in questions you couldn't answer. But what you didn't realize, what you couldn't possibly see then, is that something powerful was happening underneath the pain. Quietly, slowly, secretly, you were being rebuilt. True strength isn't born from comfort. It's forged in fire. It's born when there's no one left to call, and you learn how to comfort yourself. When the people you leaned on vanish, and you realize your legs were stronger than you ever gave them credit for. It's born when you hit emotional rock bottom, and instead of staying there, you crawl, you scratch, you stand bit by bit, moment by moment, and maybe you didn't wake up one day suddenly healed. That's not how real growth happens. You healed in layers, one painful realization at a time. You healed when you unfollowed the person you still loved but knew wasn't good for you. You healed when you deleted their messages even though it felt like erasing a part of your history. You healed when you cried in the shower and screamed into pillows but still showed up to work, still showed up for your responsibilities, still showed up for yourself. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's quiet, it's patient, it's resilient. It's in the way you chose to keep going when everything inside you wanted to give up. It's in the way you stopped waiting for closure and gave it to yourself. It's in the moment you realized that you don't need their apology, their validation, or their presence to move forward. The world doesn't give enough credit to the kind of strength it takes to walk away from someone you love because you finally loved yourself more. To unlearn the habit of explaining your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding it, to stop trying to prove you're enough and start remembering that you already are, that's the kind of strength that changes the direction of your entire life. And the beautiful part, that strength was always inside you. It didn't just appear. Pain didn't create it. It revealed it. It peeled back the parts of you that were still clinging to comfort, to approval, to external love. It showed you that even when everything falls apart, you remain, not just alive, but wiser, calmer, stronger. It was pain that taught you how powerful you truly are. You began to see things differently. You stopped searching for love in places that only ever offered you attention. You stopped confusing potential with reality. You no longer fell for empty promises or sweet words without consistent actions. That didn't make you hard or bitter. It made you discerning. It made you value your energy. It made you protective of your peace. You stopped responding to the bait of drama. You started choosing solitude over fake connection. You began to heal not by pretending to be okay, but by being brutally honest with yourself. You confronted the truth that you stayed too long, that you ignored the signs, that you gave too many chances. But instead of hating yourself for that, you learned from it. You forgave yourself. You started rewriting the narrative, because pain, when faced head-on, becomes a portal into a deeper version of you. A version that knows boundaries aren't walls, they're doors, and not everyone deserves a key. A version of you that doesn't chase people, because you understand that what's meant for you will meet you with clarity, not confusion. A version of you that no longer begs for love. You become love. You become the source, not the seeker. Every scar became a story of survival. Every wound a reminder of what you overcame. You stopped needing to prove your worth and started embodying it. That shift, that strength, the kind that doesn't need an audience, the kind that doesn't post every break through online, the kind that quietly rebuilds until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the version of yourself that used to cry over people who didn't even know how to love you. And here's what's even more powerful. Strength doesn't mean you stopped feeling. It doesn't mean you became numb or emotionless. In fact, it's the opposite. You became more human, more empathetic. But now you know how to hold space for your emotions without letting them destroy you. You learned how to process pain without making it your identity. You can cry and still be powerful. You can miss someone and still not go back. That's emotional maturity. That's emotional strength. There's a certain peace that comes when you stop resisting the pain and start embracing the lesson. You begin to thank the experience not because it didn't hurt, but because it woke you up. It pulled you out of patterns that weren't serving you. It stopped you from settling. It led you back to yourself. And slowly, you became the kind of person you needed when you were falling apart. You became the safe space you were searching for in others. You stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started realizing it happened for you, not as punishment, but as preparation. Preparation for the kind of love that won't leave. Preparation for the life that aligns with your soul, not your wounds. Preparation for the friendships that reciprocate, not just take. Preparation for the version of you that doesn't just survive life, but thrives through it. Now, you walk differently. You speak with more intention. You listen to your intuition. You protect your time. You don't tolerate disrespect just because you're lonely. You don't confuse chemistry with connection. You don't keep proving your worth to people who should have seen it the moment you showed up. You finally realize you're not hard to love. You were just loving people who weren't ready for what you bring. And that truth, it doesn't hurt anymore, it frees you, because now you're no longer begging to be chosen. You've chosen yourself, and choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. You've walked through fire. You've cried in silence, you've rebuilt from the ground up, and now your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your solitude isn't emptiness, it's empowerment. Your boundaries aren't walls, they're standards. You don't need to seek revenge. You don't need to wish karma on anyone. You don't need to prove anything. The way you live your life now, grounded, peaceful, elevated, is the evidence that you turned your pain into power. You're no longer the person who broke, you're the person who became, and that is the kind of strength no one can take from you. There comes a moment, after the tears, after the breakdowns, after you've spent nights questioning your worth, where something shifts. It doesn't happen like lightning. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or clarity or a perfect quote at the right time. It arrives in silence. In that quiet realization that you're tired of overextending, tired of accepting less than what you give, tired of repeating patterns that only leave you emptier each time. It's in that fatigue that your standards begin to change. You don't wake up one day with a full set of perfect boundaries. You build them out of experience. You start noticing the things you once ignored. You begin paying attention to how people speak to you, not just how they hold you when they want something. You feel how drained you are after certain conversations. You catch yourself romanticizing crumbs of affection and calling it a feast. And in that moment you stop lying to yourself, because pain, real pain, has this way of clearing the fog. It makes you sit with uncomfortable truths. Like the fact that the reason you kept accepting the bare minimum wasn't because that was all they could give it, because you believed you weren't worthy of asking for more. That maybe being chosen required shrinking yourself. That loving deeply meant tolerating everything. That to keep someone around, you had to over-explain, over-give, overstay. But pain opens your eyes. It's not gentle, but it's honest. It doesn't let you hide behind excuses anymore. It forces you to look at every time you settled for less than you deserved and ask yourself, why? And when you do, you realize you weren't weak. You were hopeful. You weren't blind. You were in love. But love without standards becomes sacrifice, not the good kind. The kind where you start bleeding to keep someone else warm. And eventually, pain asks you a different question. If you are willing to give this much to the wrong person, imagine how life-changing it'll be when you give to the right one, starting with you. That's when everything begins to change. You stop calling inconsistency passion. You stop calling gaslighting a misunderstanding. You stop twisting yourself into a version that pleases someone else just so they don't leave. And the more distance you put between yourself and the people who made you question your worth, the clearer your vision becomes. You stop giving chances to people who treat love like a revolving door. You stop answering calls at midnight from someone who only remembers you when they're lonely. You stop allowing sorry to be a reset button instead of the start of real change. You stop overfunctioning in relationships that barely function. And as your standards rise, something unexpected happens. Your loneliness shifts too, because before, loneliness meant craving someone, anyone, to fill the silence. Now, loneliness becomes space to reflect, space to rebuild, space to understand that being alone and being abandoned are two different things. One you choose, the other you heal from. You realize that having standards doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean building walls. It means finally honoring what your soul has been screaming for all along. Peace, consistency, emotional safety, and not just in love, but in friendships, in family dynamics, in the way you speak to yourself. Every area of your life begins to align when your standards do. People will say you've changed, and you'll smile because yes, you did. You changed from someone who tolerated emotional breadcrumbs to someone who now requires the full meal. You changed from someone who thought maybe next time into someone who now says never again. You changed from someone who chased validation to someone who validates themselves through actions, through truth, through real connection. And no, not everyone will rise to meet your new standard. Some will leave, some will be offended, some will call you too much, too distant, too hard to please. Let them. Because the people who are truly meant for your life won't see your standards as a threat. They'll see them as an invitation to rise. They'll appreciate that you know what you want, that you won't waste time in emotional limbo. That you value yourself enough to walk away from anything that doesn't honor your heart. There will come a day when someone enters your life and their presence feels like peace, not confusion, not constant questions, but ease, effort, emotional maturity, and you'll recognize them, not because they sweep you off your feet with grand gestures, but because they meet you with the energy you no longer have to beg for. And in that moment, you'll thank the pain again. Because without it, you might have accepted less, you might have said yes to something misaligned, you might have mistaken intensity for compatibility, but because of the pain, you now recognize the real thing when it shows up. Because of the pain, you now trust yourself more than you trust potential. Because of the pain, you no longer choose people based on how lonely you feel, but based on how aligned they are with the life you're building. There's no shame in having loved deeply. There's no shame in having given someone too many chances. There's no shame in having had low standards, only in refusing to raise them after the lesson, because now you know better. Now you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. You've spent too many nights overthinking messages, questioning if you were too much or not enough. You've exhausted yourself playing roles that made someone else comfortable. You've bent over backwards trying to keep connections alive that were meant to expire, and all that did was drain you. Now you finally understand. Love isn't supposed to hurt more than it heals. It's not supposed to feel like a test you can never pass. It's not supposed to be inconsistent, confusing, or conditional. It's supposed to feel like safety, and that safety begins with you. In the standards you hold, in the boundaries you honor, in the voice you stop silencing. You're not high maintenance, you're high value, there's a difference, you're not cold. You've simply learned that not everyone deserves access to your heart. You're not closed off, you're selective, because your energy is expensive. Your peace is priceless, and the right people will never make you feel guilty for protecting both. The pain didn't just change you, it refined you. It helped you see clearly what you used to excuse. It showed you that love is not meant to be earned. It's meant to be shared, reciprocated, and nurtured. And anyone who can't meet you at that level, they're not bad. They're just not for you. And that's the most powerful place to be. Not bitter, not guarded, not afraid, but clear. Clear on what you want, clear on what you won't tolerate, clear on the kind of life and love you're building. Clear enough to walk away when something no longer aligns, clear enough to say, I don't chase, I attract, and if it's not meeting me halfway, it's not meant for me. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how many chances you give. You can control how quickly you walk away from confusion. You can control whether your standards are rooted in fear or in self-worth. And the more you honor yourself, the less you'll feel the need to prove your value to people who never deserved you in the first place. The pain served its purpose. It gave you the clarity that comfort never could. It helped you define who you are, what you deserve, and how you'll never lose yourself again in the name of love. And for that, you don't hold resentment anymore. You hold gratitude because you finally learned pain doesn't lower your standards. It raises them. And the next time someone enters your life, you won't ask, do they like me? You'll ask, do they respect me? Do they meet me where I am? Do they see me? Not just when it's convenient, but when it matters most. You've raised the bar. And now everything that doesn't reach it fades quietly, without drama, without pain, because you've outgrown it. You've outgrown trying to convince someone to choose you. You've outgrown being someone's option. You've outgrown the version of yourself that used to accept less, because you thought that's all you could get. Not anymore. Now you walk like someone who knows exactly what they bring to the table, and if someone can't see it, you don't lower the standard, you raise the distance, because you finally understand your love is rare, and it deserves to be met with nothing less than everything. There's a point where the noise becomes unbearable. The outside voices, what they think, what they say, what they expect. The endless opinions from people who haven't lived a single second inside your experience. They talk like they know, but they have no idea what it took for you to even get out of bed this morning. No idea how heavy your heart was while you smiled. No idea how many nights you stayed silent when all you wanted was for someone to ask if you were really okay, and mean it. You don't realize how loud the world is until you're in pain. Then suddenly, every distraction feels like a scream. Social media, people's fake concern, the pressure to move on quickly, the constant questions about your choices, it's all noise. Noise that drowns out the one voice that actually matters, your own. But the thing about pain is that it silences everything else. It strips away the surface level chatter. It quiets the chaos, because when you're hurting that deeply, you stop caring about how it looks. You stop pretending, you stop performing, you get real, because you have no other choice, and that's the gift. That's the moment pain shifts from being an enemy to being a guide. Because for the first time in your life, you're forced to sit with yourself, without filters, without distractions, without the usual numbing habits, and it's in that silence that the truth starts whispering. Not the truth they told you, not the truth you learned to believe to survive, but the real truth, the one that's always been inside you, buried beneath all the noise, the one that says you are not broken, you are becoming. You begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are, and you start listening to the quiet certainty rising from within, that voice that says you're not too sensitive, you just feel deeply, you're not too much, you're just in a world that asks people to be small. You're not unlovable, they just didn't know how to love someone who refuses to settle for half-hearted effort. As the noise fades, your clarity sharpens, you see who really showed up for you, and who disappeared when you no longer served their comfort. You realize how often you prioritized other people's peace while abandoning your own. You notice the patterns, the way you kept choosing people who reminded you of old wounds, the way you confused love with sacrifice, the way you stayed silent just to keep the peace, even when that silence was breaking you. Pain reveals what comfort hides. It exposes the cracks in the foundation you were standing on. It unmasks the relationships that were conditional. It forces you to confront what you've been tolerating just to feel a little less alone. And when you finally sit with that truth, when you stop running, something powerful happens. You begin to detach from what no longer aligns. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in peace. You stop needing to be liked by everyone. You stop explaining your decisions to people who never cared about your growth to begin with. You stop giving energy to conversations that go in circles. You stop betraying your own needs just to maintain connections that were draining you dry, and the more you let go, the more space you create, space to breathe, space to think, space to rebuild a life that doesn't require constant validation. Space to hear your own heart, clearly, fully, loudly, and for once, you don't rush to fill that space with noise. You sit in it. You learn to enjoy your own company. You begin to feel safe in your solitude. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. There's power in that kind of solitude, the kind that isn't lonely but liberating, the kind where you no longer feel the need to perform, where you can just be. Where you're not constantly editing yourself to be more palatable, more agreeable, more likable. You start to realize that the version of you that's real, raw, flawed, unfiltered, is the version that deserves to be seen and loved, not the version you created just to be accepted. Pain taught you that lesson, because without the hurt, you might have kept playing a role. You might have kept dancing for their applause, waiting for permission to feel worthy. But the pain didn't give you permission, it gave you freedom. It forced you to take off the mask and meet yourself, and once you met yourself, truly met yourself, everything changed. You started noticing what really matters. It's not the likes, not the attention, not the external success. It's peace, it's alignment. It's being able to go to sleep at night knowing you're not betraying your soul for anyone. It's having people around you who see your heart, not just your usefulness. It's choosing environments where you don't have to shrink or pretend or constantly prove your value. It's conversations that nourish you, not deplete you. It's the kind of love that doesn't confuse you. It holds you steady. You realize that simplicity is underrated, that stillness is sacred, that being alone isn't a punishment. It's a privilege when you're surrounded by noise that doesn't honor your truth. And in that stillness, you start creating from a deeper place. Living from a deeper place, you stop chasing the spotlight and start following your inner compass. You stop fighting for attention and start moving in quiet confidence. Your intuition sharpens, your gut speaks louder. You see through manipulation faster, you walk away quicker, you no longer beg for clarity. You become your own clarity. You no longer ask, what do they want from me? You ask, what do I want for myself? And that shift is everything. Because when you stop defining yourself by how you're perceived, you start living from who you actually are. And the truth is, some people won't like this new version of you. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you've lost your softness, but they don't understand what it took for you to grow. They didn't sit with you through the storm. They didn't watch you rebuild yourself from shattered pieces. They didn't feel what you felt. And so, their opinion no longer holds weight, because the people who are meant for the healed version of you, the real version, will find you in that stillness. They'll meet you in that peace. They won't be intimidated by your growth. They'll respect your standards. They won't try to pull you back into the noise. You'll invite them into the quiet. And when that happens, you'll look back on the pain and feel something surprising. Gratitude, not because it didn't hurt, not because it was fair, not because you deserved it, but because it woke you up. It peeled away everything false. It brought you back to your truth. It showed you what matters. It cleared the noise so you could finally hear your own voice, and that voice, that's the one that leads you home. You no longer live to be understood. You live to be aligned. You no longer force connections. You allow space for the right ones to stay. You no longer run from yourself. You run toward yourself, and you do it without fear, without apology, without shrinking. Because the pain didn't just wound you, it refined you. It carved out a version of you that is grounded, self-aware, discerning. A version of you that doesn't crave loud approval, but quiet truth. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be where your soul is heard. You don't need 1,000,000 followers. You just need a few real ones. You don't need to win anyone back. You just need to stay true to the one person who never left you. The silence is no longer scary. The stillness is no longer unbearable. It's where you find your answers now. It's where you return when the world feels heavy. It's where you recharge, where you listen, where you remember, and every time you find yourself drifting, you come back to that voice, the one pain uncovered. The one that says, you're enough, not because they said so, but because you know so, and in that knowing, you find something the world can't take from you, peace, the kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that doesn't need attention, the kind that says, I've been through fire and I came out quiet, because I no longer need to prove anything to anyone. I already proved it to myself. There's something people rarely tell you when you're going through heartbreak or betrayal or loss. They tell you that it'll pass. They tell you to move on. They tell you it happened for a reason. But what they don't tell you is that the pain you're feeling right now is actually preparing you for something better. Not because life is always fair, not because you deserve what happened, not because there's some cosmic explanation that makes it okay, but because pain has a way of revealing what needs to change before you can rise. And sometimes it has to hurt that badly for you to finally stop settling for the things you used to beg to stay in your life. You've probably had moments where you wondered if you'd ever feel whole again. Where you questioned if you'd ever trust someone, love again, or even recognize yourself. And that's okay, because the truth is, pain breaks you open, but in that breaking, it also clears space. Space to grow, space to unlearn, space to rebuild not who you were, but who you were always meant to become. And the person you're becoming, they're not weak, they're not fragile, they're not stuck in the past, they are wiser. More aware, less available to things that hurt, less tolerant of people who drain, less impressed by words and more attentive to actions. They're not looking for love to save them. They're building a life where love is the bonus, not the oxygen. That shift didn't happen overnight. It took every sleepless night, every painful realization, every lesson learned the hard way, but all of it added up. all of it counted, because now you're prepared. Not to repeat what broke you, but to recognize what will grow you. You used to chase people who couldn't see you. You used to wait around for someone to pick you like you were an option. You used to tie your worth to how someone treated you. You thought love meant staying loyal to potential, even when it cost you your peace, but not anymore. Now you've learned how to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You've stopped proving your worth to people who weren't ready for it. You've stopped trying to fit into spaces you've already outgrown. You've stopped over-explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them to begin with, because now your peace is your priority. And it's not that you've become cold. You're still soft, still kind, still open to love. But now you know that love isn't something you earn by sacrificing yourself. Love isn't something you fight to keep when it's constantly making you feel small. Love isn't supposed to feel like chasing someone who's running away from you. It's supposed to feel like safety, like consistency, like home. But you had to experience what it wasn't before you could recognize what it is. You had to be disappointed before you learned how to stop depending on potential. You had to feel the sting of betrayal to understand that loyalty without reciprocity is self-abandonment. You had to be broken to learn how to hold your own heart with gentleness. You had to lose people to learn how to stop losing yourself. And now that you've learned, you see it all differently. You don't fall for chaos anymore. You don't interpret mixed signals as mystery. You see them as immaturity. You don't chase people who ghost you. You grieve them and you let them go. You don't beg for communication. You require it. You don't stay in confusion. You ask for clarity, and if clarity isn't given, you walk. Not because you're angry, but because you've worked too hard to rebuild yourself to be broken again by someone who doesn't know how to handle your heart. That's the power you've stepped into. And it's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not about making big announcements. It's the quiet way you say no now, the calm way you detach, the peaceful way you walk away from drama, the gentle way you love yourself enough to stop trying to force what isn't aligned. That kind of growth is silent, but it's undeniable. You are no longer the same person you were before the pain. You've outgrown the version of you that used to chase closure, that needed people to understand, that couldn't sleep without an answer, that clung to the past just to feel something familiar. You've stepped into a version of you that understands that sometimes closure is choosing to forgive someone who never apologized. Sometimes healing is letting go of a story you kept telling yourself about why it didn't work out. Sometimes growth is choosing peace over proving your point. You've learned that not everyone is meant to stay. And that doesn't make you unlovable, it makes you honest, because the people who left, they didn't break you, they revealed where your standards needed to rise, they highlighted the parts of you that still needed healing. They brought attention to the way you were still tolerating what wasn't right for you. And yes, it hurt, but that pain gave you permission to begin again, this time differently, this time with boundaries. With self-respect, with clarity, with a heart that no longer opens itself to anyone who simply shows interest, but to someone who shows consistency. This time, you're not hoping someone chooses you, you've already chosen yourself. And in that choice, everything changes. You begin to attract differently, not because you're playing games, but because your energy is aligned now. You're no longer giving from a place of lack, you're giving from overflow. You're no longer holding space for people who leave you guessing. You're holding space for people who show up. You're no longer afraid to be alone, because your solitude is now your sanctuary. And when someone comes along who matches that energy, you'll know, not because it's perfect, but because it's peaceful, because you won't have to sacrifice your truth to keep them, because you'll feel seen, not just admired, heard, not just tolerated, chosen, not just temporarily desired. You're ready for that now, not because you found it, but because you became it. You became the love you were waiting for, the safety you were craving, the loyalty you kept giving to everyone else. You became the one who shows up. The one who listens, the one who holds space. You became the version of you that doesn't need saving anymore, just evolving, and maybe that's the whole point of it all. Maybe the pain didn't come to destroy you, it came to prepare you. Not for more suffering, but for real love, real alignment, real freedom. Maybe it came to strip away everything that wasn't real so you could finally make room for what is. Maybe it came to show you that strength isn't just about enduring. It's about releasing, it's about surrendering, it's about rising, and rise you did, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. You rose from the ashes of what you thought was the end. You rebuilt from the ground up. You reclaimed your power, you rewrote your story, and now you're not just stronger. You're softer in all the right places. You don't just survive, you thrive. You don't just speak, you speak truth. You don't just love, you love with boundaries, with wisdom, with depth. And none of that came easy. It came through the fire, but now you're fireproof. And when you look back, you don't carry resentment. You carry gratitude, because now you see the truth. The pain was never there to punish you. It was preparing you for the life you were always meant to live. So now you're here, not where you started, not who you used to be, but somewhere entirely new. You carry the lessons, the scars, the wisdom, the invisible armor forged from every tear you cried in silence. And yet, somehow, you're still standing. That alone is strength. You're not healed because everything's perfect. You're healed because you stopped needing everything to be perfect in order to feel whole. You've made peace with what didn't work out. You've let go of the people who couldn't love you the way you deserve. You've closed the doors that led nowhere, not out of bitterness, but because you finally realized your energy is not up for negotiation. The pain tried to define you, but you redefined yourself, and now every part of you that was once cracked wide open, it shines, because that's what happens when light gets in. You've stopped seeking validation from people who never saw you clearly. You've stopped molding yourself to fit into places that were never meant to hold you. You've stopped chasing love that runs and started walking in love that stays. This version of you, this calm, clear, grounded version, it didn't come from things going right. It came from walking through the fire and refusing to let it burn your soul. You are the product of every hard decision you made when it would have been easier to stay small. And now, no one can take that from you, because it's not something you were given, it's something you earned. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you got here. You don't have to justify the healing, the solitude, the boundaries, the standards. This peace you found, it's yours. You paid for it with growth, with loss, with the courage to walk away when it hurt to do so, and the strength it took to not go back, even when your heart missed what you knew wasn't meant for you. So here you are, whole, not perfect, but whole, and if no one ever told you this before, I'm telling you now. You didn't just survive the pain, you alchemized it. You turned it into clarity, into power, into love, into purpose. And that moment, the moment you said, "Thank you for the pain, it made me stronger," that wasn't just closure, that was the beginning of everything.